last week. Had an opportunity to get involved with the Fixel Institute on campus. And, my dad passed away, I think last week would have been 7 years ago from ALS, Lou Gehrig's disease. And I became aware and familiar with the Fixel Institute after meeting Lee Fixel, who is a grad and an investor. So becoming more familiar with that, I think it's one of about a dozen elite kind of centers throughout the country that does incredible work on these neurological diseases, whether that's Parkinson's, Alzheimer's, ALS. There's a number of categories there, but was involved with a fundraiser and a tremendous amount of respect for the work they're doing on campus here. And to know that that's 5 minutes away from here is pretty special. So thankful for that opportunity and hopeful that they continue to grow and there's more opportunities for research and how to improve care. Really impressive place. I do think our football team got better. We had 3 really good practices, Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday. And I think the staff and the players did a great job competing. I think they competed all 3 days were very competitive. One of the better open dates I've been a part of. And I think that we're hopeful that we improved in a lot of areas there that can help our team going forward. This week's a big week. UCF, obviously, in-state opponent right down the road that's recently made the jump into the Big 12 and P4 football. And they have a very established staff. I think Coach Malzahn, just a tremendous amount of respect for his career, all that he's accomplished, both as a head coach and an offensive coordinator. And their identity as a team reflects that. I think he's a really good coach. Their rushing attack, the quarterback run game, the 3-level shots, the complementary plays, really a challenge there for our defense. And I think Ted Roof has been around the block, and he's got tremendous experience as a coordinator, and I think they have good personnel on defense. And special teams, very much a game plan outfit, and can cause some headaches for you. I do think they have an explosive returner. So we've got a good football team coming into the Swamp on Saturday night, and we're looking forward to competing with these guys. What do we got?
Another sellout at the Swamp, and the importance of maybe capturing that, getting off to a quick start, energy, kind of similar to Mississippi State. How important is that going to be for the team, coming into Saturday?
Yeah, no, I think starting fast is critical to playing winning football. And certainly when you play at home, if we're able to get the crowd into the game, it's a big piece of the puzzle. There's no doubt that'll be part of one of the keys to playing winning football Saturday night. We got to start fast, and we've got to get our fans involved, and I think that we did that a little bit better at Mississippi State. I think that was a big part of the game.
What were some of the things you put on, your finger on defensively during the bye week that you feel like maybe you addressed and kind of got fixed?
Yeah, I think we were a little closer the last time we were out, but still, I think between play process, I think, playing against tempo, I think that, overall that group needs a little bit more consistency. I think our ability to do it down in, down out, I think we did a good job on third down at times. But like we talked about before, there's 4 or 5 possessions in the game where, it's like we disappear, whether it was the tempo possession where they scored in the first half and then the 2-minute possession right before the half. Those are 2 examples of where we're playing really good defense for a half, but we got 2 possessions where we kind of fall apart. So all the research that we did in this past week, it's alignment, it's assignment, it's techniques, it's fundamentals. Those are the areas that we spent a lot of our time on this past week.
How close are you to getting your team healthy again? You know, you had stated that the bye week would be good for that. So how close are you to getting everybody healthy?
I think it's to be determined a little bit. You know, I do think we got a couple guys back. You know, I think given the current format of injuries and availability reports and all that, we're not commenting specifically. But I do think it was good for our guys to have a couple days off. I think we didn't coddle them, I would tell you that. I mean, I think it was real in there for 3 days. So we worked extremely hard Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday. We were in full pads. We got after it. And then I think committed to them, giving them Friday and Saturday off. And then we were back in the building yesterday. So I think we're closer. And I think obviously we're not commenting specifically about injuries. But I do think it was a good week for us.
Your involvement with the scout team and maybe on the defensive side, do you continue that and ramp it up, or you maybe set the tone and back off and see what they do?
Yeah, no, I think we'll be intentional about, you know, making sure that environment is what we want it to be. You know, I think, and really just to support the players. You know, I think their opinion matters, and I think, you know, no matter if it's right or wrong, sometimes you got to listen. You know, and I think big thing is some of the things that we emphasized helped our team. You know, and I think we have to continue to do that. So, and there'll be even more of that. You know, I think ultimately we have a very specific plan in terms of how we think we can come up with solutions for some of those things.
You mentioned making some changes, maybe personnel-wise. Are there a couple of guys maybe that popped in that Mississippi State game that you were like, okay, we need to get X player a little bit more involved?
You know, I mean, I think a guy that I thought has been very productive, Jack Pyburn's had a lot of production, you know, and I think he played in that game. I thought he played well. He'd be a guy that would be at the top of the list, in my opinion. You know, I think some of the young backers are good players, you know. They continue to get a little bit better. We saw those guys take a step in the right direction last week. And then, you know, we have to generate some form of a pass rush. You know, we've got to find a way to affect the quarterback. And, you know, I think that's an area where we're evaluating all the personnel that we're trying to use, especially on third down. And then we've got various technical things that we're working on, scramble drills. You know, I think just in general, some situations. But overall, I think the personnel is always up for evaluation.
Bill, you mentioned kind of maybe putting an extra emphasis on listening to the players the past week or two. Anything in particular that you heard from them that maybe you didn't expect or that kind of jumped out?
No, I mean, I wouldn't say that there's – we always have great dialogue. I'm going to meet with this group at 1:30 today. You know, I mean, I think we got a smart, aware group. You know, I mean, I think ultimately they understand and they want to come up with solutions too. You know, I mean, I think they take a tremendous amount of pride in what they do. So overall, I think it's a part of leadership. It's just, you know, you're trying to empower your people. You know, I think at all levels, staff included, right? I think ultimately, so we'll continue to do that.
How much do assignment and alignment issues on defense force you to simplify in terms of scheme to try and fix those things at this point in the season versus it, you know, just kind of re-drilling and trying to establish what you need to be doing with what you already had?
I think it's a combination of both. I think you're spot on. I think there is some of that. Maybe less is more. But also I think there's a teaching element to that. And then there's an application in a game setting. You know, I think how do we recreate the game for the players? You know, I think we've been doing that. I would just say on offense, for example, I think that's one of the things that we do extremely well. Our scout team environment resembles the game in a lot of ways. You know, Justin Postuma is the in-house defensive coordinator, right? So he's in charge of recreating the game for the offensive players throughout the week, and I would tell you he does a phenomenal job, right? So we're trying to do the same things for special teams and defense.
How much, you know, you talked about not coddling them last week. How much do you challenge this team physically, particularly with, run-heavy team coming in UCF that's going to
Yeah.
try to establish that.
No, I mean, I would tell you that it was extremely competitive last week. And it was a lot of fun, to be quite honest. I mean, and I think you'll have a chance to talk with players. They can give you more insight into that. But, yeah, I thought it was phenomenal. It was physical. It was fast. It was game-like. It was very competitive. It was scored. It was graded. I mean, it was a lot of fun to be a part of. So I'm hopeful that we got better. I feel as if we got better last week.
You guys played KJ Jefferson, you quarterback. Who gives you that look? Is it Lawrence Wright that gives you that look on the scout team?
Yeah, I don't know that we can replicate 6'3", 261 pounds. But, yeah, I mean, I do think that we have made a cut-up of that game, those scenarios that we were in, just the physical challenge of getting the guy down, not only when he's a passer that's extending the play, but also when he's a design runner. It's a big man, and there's a certain it's part of the challenge of playing against a player like that. So we definitely have made cut-ups and are trying to teach and anticipate that from the player standpoint.
UCF seems intent on and very capable of running the football. Just what have you seen from them on tape, and then kind of talking to your guys about the importance of your run fits and keeping contained to kind of keep them in front of you?
Yeah, the quarterback's involved in all the read dynamic, all the elements of the run game. That's the ultimate challenge. And Gus does a really good job. It's almost wing T / option blueprint here in terms of dive, quarterback, pitch, all the read elements, whether it's zone read, power read, and then they've got a series of perimeter plays that go with that. And I think the 3-level routes, there's a ton of eye discipline, got to be sound on the edges. And it's a typical, Coach Malzahn does a phenomenal job. There's a lot of conflict. And that's going to be a big part of the week, is just narrowing our focus a little bit, making sure we're all buttoned up, ready to go.
Is there anything you can take last year from the Arkansas game with KJ in terms of tendencies, or is this just different offense, different scheme, or how do you?
Yeah, no, it's a completely different world. But, I mean, the issues that he can create because he's a big man. I mean, ultimately, I think that's what you take away from that game, because a lot of the players on our team now were out there in those situations last year, so we have a ton of awareness.
They've got a great running back in Harvey who can hit it on the inside and get that second level, and then boom, he's gone. How do you deal with a guy like that?
Yeah, he's very similar to a player that we've had here in the past. I would compare him to. I mean, I think this guy's low center of gravity. He's elusive. He's got some bulk to his frame. And he can make you miss on the second level. I think he's got really good instincts and vision. He's patient. And when he does get loose, he can really set you up, does a nice job jump cutting. He's a good player. And they got several backs. They got a multitude of backs. And you pair that with the quarterback element, and that's ultimately where the challenge is.
Were you able to watch any of that Alabama-Georgia game?
I did. I watched it.
Look at it in a fan in any way, like, wow, that's exciting, like people are talking, a lot of us, or from a coach, do you just analyze it X and O, and is that daunting in a way to see the level of where they're at? And how close do you think Florida is to getting there?
Well, I mean, I think both of those rosters are very talented. That's evident. I think we've played against Georgia a handful of times. I think we're familiar with them. Obviously, all these players we have a pulse for because we evaluated them and tried to recruit some of them. So, yeah, I mean, I've spent 5 years there. Going and playing there on the road is a challenge, much like a lot of the places in our league, much like coming to our place and play. So, I mean, I think an open date is good for a lot of reasons, right? You get a pulse for college football, and you also quickly realize everybody's got their own set of issues, right? So I think the key is we got to continue to improve. Who are we going to be as we go through the rest of this thing? Can we get better? Can we fix some of our solutions? Can some of our players play their best football? Can some of these young players come alive? I do think that we have a couple players that are improving that can help our team down the stretch.
Really, it's your 30th game here at Florida. Where do you feel like the program's made the most strides? And you know, I know the results aren't what you want it to
Yeah.
be, but what's it going to take to kind of flip that script a little?
Yeah, I mean, I think ultimately, I think we have built a lot of good systems, you know, in terms of in-house, how we operate, overall the workflow. I think everything's up and running. You know, I think maybe that wasn't the case when we first got here. I think we've done a good job adjusting to the landscape. You know, I think for every 6 months we were here in the beginning, it just continued to change. But yeah, I mean, I think we've got more depth. I think the makeup of our team just don't have a ton of headaches day in, day out relative to their decision making, their character. I feel really good about that part. But ultimately, I think we've had this conversation many times. We got to go produce on the grass, and twice this year we didn't play up to our potential, in my opinion. So we need to continue to focus on what is going to help us perform better. And I think ultimately, any time we spend on anything else is a waste of time. You know, I think we got to get consumed with things that will get the result we want, and try to be process oriented. That's what we're trying to do.
Player experience, that's something you didn't really mention, but it's the improvements there with housing, the parking, the
Yeah.
meals, recruiting, visits. Can you kind of,
Yeah, I mean, I think
obviously
that's
an
part of
emphasis
it.
you.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I think much like anything you take over, you come in, you do your homework, you try to improve your product. You know, we're not only trying to improve the player experience, we're trying to improve the product that we recruit to, right? I mean, all these things add up, right? So I do think the administration's done a great job in a lot of areas to give us better facilities, resources. I think we've got infrastructure. And I do think our team is deeper, and we're still, I think we're very much a work in progress, and I don't think that's changing. I think it's always going to be that way.
For decades, it was the big three, Florida, Florida State, Miami. Is it the big four now with UCF? Are they on a level playing field with you guys?
Well, I think they're in the transition. I mean, ultimately, you can't help but respect what they've done, and I think the coaching staff they have, they've done a good job recruiting. I think the portal helped benefits in a lot of ways. Yeah, but just overall the level of commitment, I mean, the Big 12 is a good league, and I think ultimately they're in position to continue, advancing. So ultimately the winner of that league is going to get a place at the table, right? So they're in position to do that.
You talk about recruiting. Orlando's been a pretty fertile area, both for you guys and for them. So the importance of that game from even that standpoint too, and just what Orlando kind of means to the Gators in terms of recruiting.
Yeah, I mean, I think every part of this state, is critical. And in particular, a place. I mean, they're producing a consistent number of players. A lot of them some of our better players are from that area. So, and we got Gators down there. They're everywhere. So, ultimately, all these games are important. When you play an in-state team, there's a ton of eyes on you, and I think the caliber of football that you put on display is very important. So, this is a big one. There's no doubt about that.
Really on defense, what can you guys do within the scheme to stack the box more, just to shore up the run defense, especially against a team like this?
Well, I think the key is that we are aligned correctly, that everybody knows their assignment, and then we go execute with the right fundamentals and techniques. I think ultimately that's what we've learned. Obviously, we've done a ton of homework here, having a little bit of extra time in the open date. So, look, sometimes you're playing coverage and you got a light box. Sometimes you're playing post safety and you're short in coverage, right? So there's weaknesses with every defensive call, and I think the key that's part of the chess match, right? Is guessing right and then understanding where your weaknesses are, and then the players got to play to their leverage, play to their help, and I think those are the areas where we got to get better.
The two quarterbacks, obviously highly effective at Mississippi State. What did you did you learn some more about that and as you progress? I mean, it's kind of I don't know if it's new to you, but it's unique.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I think ultimately yeah, I mean, I think Graham had a phenomenal week, and that translated to playing really good in the game. And I thought DJ did a lot of really good things, too, to lead 2 scoring drives, and 2 of them from backed up, So, yeah, it's healthy. Man, that's what I would tell you. I think they got a great relationship. It's fun to go to that room every day. It's fun to be on the grass with them every day, to see them work together, to prepare together. Literally, they were they're going to be in this room here in a short amount of time, right? So, doing work on this screen. So, I think the big thing is the character of both guys, their humility, their selflessness, the confidence that they have, and the way they've affected their teammates in a positive way. That's the big thing. So this could easily be a distraction or an issue, but it's not, because I think the makeup of both players. So, and look, DJ will continue to get better. The more reps he accumulates in the game, the better. All of a sudden, you're preparing a little bit different way. So, I think it's healthy.
How much is that going to continue to be the gauge, and maybe how does that make them both better too in terms of practice performance,
Yeah.
leading to reps and so forth? And how you
Sure.
use them?
Well, there is a competitive element to it, because I'm watching them closely every week, in terms of how they practice, how they perform in practice. So, and then how we decide to play the players that week. I think each matchup's a little bit different, but ultimately each week of prep is different. So I think, both players got better last week, I would say, and I think they both took reps with both groups. So we're going to stick to our plan there, and I think we'll do what we think those players are capable of doing when we call the game. I think that's an important part.
Is that plan still, I think it was 3rd, 6th, 9th drive for DJ. Is that just knowing, hey, Graham doesn't have to look over his shoulder if he has a bad first drive, that they know what their plan is for the game? And then is it frustrating that when DJ goes in, second play, you lose a fumble and he's lost one of his drives?
Well, we adjust. I mean, I think we didn't count the possession right before half where we handed off an outside zone. Like we started the half with Graham. So, I mean, we're gonna adjust based off what we think is right. But I think week to week we'll set the rotation. And I think ultimately for me, what I don't want is a guy to be playing cautious. I want him to do what he's supposed to do, to have confidence, and to play, be aggressive and not. And then they're working together, not looking over their shoulder, worrying about if I screw up. Then I just don't think that's good for either player. Now, if they were very similar in experience and age, then and it was a true competition, then I think we probably would treat it that way. But we would make that decision in camp, So I think here we got a very unique dynamic. You got a guy who's one of the best quarterbacks in the country, and then you got this young player it's undoubtedly brings a level to the team that I think can help the team be better. So.
You mentioned R.J. Harvey, somebody that you had a running back like him. Who was that?
He's playing at another school right now.